test. That's probably fine.
I can think back. As a woman.
Alright, so what does it mean to be truly strong as a woman?
I think it's when you truly embody the gentleness that you were given with as a trait and a characteristic that is so unique to you, that is especially striking in women. And I use the word striking because gentleness can be a grit that you don't see coming. It has the power to soften up. It is soft, but it has the power to soften up the hardest heart as well. And I think that's something we both experience.
Yeah.
If you would talk about
Yeah. I mean, we were watching Star Wars, and I think one of the characters we want to talk about was Leia and her dynamic with Han Solo. And it was really interesting because you could see like over time, because Han loved Leia, you could see him like softening up, like in a good way, like in terms of his heart, like opening his heart to her more. And before he was like brash and he didn't really care too much about how she felt, even though it was completely reasonable, right? He would always do things and crazy maneuvers without much consideration to her. And over time, like in the last movie, you could see her like he actually said sorry to her, which is crazy because in the second movie he was like, what happened? He was about to be frozen, like in this carbonite, and then Leia was like, you guys probably know this already, but Leia was like, I love you, and he was like, I know. And then you could see him slowly soften up to that love over time, and it's really interesting to see. And I think there's this misconception for guys in a lot of like the relationship community that I think it swings both ways. It's like one side is like, oh, you have to like cater to everything a woman asks of you, like you can't say no, you have to sit, she's always better than you, like. But then there's always the other camp, which is just like everything she says is wrong, stop caring about her feelings, just put her in her place or whatever. But you can see that really delicate balance with Han, because when he does that, he doesn't become weaker. He becomes like his strength is now turned outside of them. If you think about it that way, like you can either, as a man, you can. Well, we'll have to first talk about like man's strength. I guess man's strength is like traditional strength, like physical strength, or like being extremely intelligent to the point where you can like outsmart everyone, and in a sense, like
it's very outward.
It's outward strength, but for women, it's like inward strength, right? And I guess you can, if you want to talk about Han and Leia, like you could see him like sort of using his strength at her, sort of like throwing it at her, like, oh, your Highness, we just rescued you. Like, why are you screaming at us all the time? And then all that stuff about him being like, oh, you love me because I'm a scoundrel, and you love scoundrels and all that. And you can see that's like there's nothing wrong with the fact that he has strength, but if he continues to use that strength on her, then he won't actually be able to develop that rapport with her and actually have that loving relationship with her, right? And then once he actually softens up and opens his heart up to her, now he's turning his strength outside of the both of them. And so now, like he's able to protect her. He's able to have that outward strength for something else. And yeah, do you want to like talk about your experience with that?
My experience? You mean our experience?
Our experience, yeah. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I relate to Leia in some sort of way, because at the beginning when we met, there's a lot of character about Carlos that I felt like was a bit brash as well. Like it wasn't rounded. It was this energy that is building up from all this time, that wanted to have clarity, have purpose, and be able to inject his energy into something that is actually lasting, but it wasn't truly settled. There isn't anywhere, so it kind of like bounces everywhere all at once, and I felt quite repelled by
It's
that.
like that. It's like that ADHD energy. You know?
Yeah.
Like they diagnose little boys with ADHD, but really it's just this like abundance of energy. Right?
Yeah. And it's so interesting because like people. At one point, I also experienced that kind of level of energy as well because I wanted to like for me it's like wanted to be my energy is like inwards, but it also wanted to be
seen,
be complemented with your energy sometimes. I wanted to receive and contrast. Yeah. And so it was until like opening, being willing to open up to love and letting down your guard and your ego and everything that I've known from before, that it sets me free to be able to how would you?
It's like now that you know the strength is like there.
Yeah.
You can now feel you can now rest behind it instead of having to
Exactly.
give it yourself.
Yeah.
I can definitely attest to that as well. Like I think before I met Vanessa, it's like, you know, when you're a guy and you're young, so you have all your energy, right? You want to just be powerful in every situation. Like you want to just use all your energy on everything. But that doesn't always turn out the right way because, as you know, the art of war, Sun Tzu, like to not fight is actually a lot of times better than fighting. And the interesting thing is like, when I got with her, the stuff that put her off wasn't actually because like, it wasn't the strength. I think there's also, okay, it depends on whether you're dealing with a good crowd or a bad crowd, but there's another misconception where it's like, a woman will try to like emasculate her man. But now that I've been with her, and now that we've come out of sort of that phase of like trying to being at odds with each other about that, it's like, I think I'm starting to recognize that there's a part of it that's like, a woman's afraid of what her man is capable of because he's sort of like, because I'm talking about this is like before you have kids and you settle into the relationship and you embrace, you're starting to get into the root of things and you embrace that oneness that you share, right? But before that, there's always this kind of squabble. You get into this kind of struggle. You get into where the woman tries to like test him to like get a response out of him, or like test him to see what she can do in response, because instinctively she's afraid of what he's capable of. Because he's not exercising it in a way that's making her feel safe, for example, or it could be a myriad of other reasons. It doesn't really matter. But I think a lot of people say like, oh, you know, she's just trying to emasculate you, trying to make you less. And I think the sad reality is that I think, yes, it's true that a lot of relationships linger on that level of like, I just still gotta see if he's, you know, if I'm capable of being with him. And, you know, it takes a long time before a woman can completely open up herself to someone, right? Especially someone as intimate as like her potential husband or her man. And I think it's wrong to say that the woman is trying to emasculate the man. Rather, the woman is afraid of surrendering and afraid of what the man is capable of, and therefore tries to suppress it, or tries to like get around it, or try to weasel her way around it. And there's always that conflict, and the man fights back with whatever he has, like the power or whatever he has. And some people get a kick out of that. It's like, wow, it's exciting. It's like you get this kind of dynamic, which is a part of like, you know, I guess like a intersexual relationship as well. But it's just, I think ultimately, I was getting somewhere, but it was about like,
the realm.
Yeah, it was like the it was like, ultimately I think there's something to be said about the man and woman who embrace their differences and come together, like the man surrendering his strength and the woman giving up herself. And having that become something new, like stop fighting about the differences you have, but to actually translate both of your strengths into each other.
That's a really good way to put it.
And it's also like, I guess you can see that in Han and Leia's scenario. Like, it's not that big of a thing in the movies, but you can just from the character progression of Han, right, from this like really brash guy who just does whatever he wants, to someone who's actually gonna, you know, commit to a woman. And they do eventually get married and stuff, which is really cool. Like, commit to a woman for life until he dies, actually. And I don't think it's wise for us to just dismiss that trope of like, oh, you know, the woman, you know, like the Beauty and the Beast thing, like the Beauty meets the Beast, and then she like tames the Beast, and or like the other way around, where it's like Snow White, she's like such a good girl, and then she's like preparing herself for a man, and her man like fights the dragon to beat her. Like, I think we as a culture try to reject that. We're like, oh no, we're beyond that now. Like, all these things are of the past. Like, it's a antique, archaic understanding of the world. But there's a lot to be said about that that dynamic that a man and woman does share.
Yeah.
And we still see the manifestation of today. I think the issue is, at the end of the day, we can't see each other as enemies, but we do have to, in a sense, like, to be in a romantic relationship, to transcend past all the petty stuff, you do have to give up the best part of yourself, potentially lose it to the other person. And I'm talking about this in a context of probably a marriage, right, where the both of you are actually committed, and the danger of doing this, complete giving up yourself, is obviously you meet someone who doesn't actually have your best interests in mind.
Who doesn't mutually surrender the same way.
Yeah, who's not going to actually do that for you in return.
Could you elaborate on the best part? What do you mean by giving up the best part?
I guess you can say, like, okay, well, for me, it was, so I come from a background, or just most guys these days come from a background of like believing that their strength or whatever power they have because they're a man, like this physical power you have, is evil. And so, in a sense, like 4 or 5 years ago, I started realizing that aspect of myself and reconciling that aspect of myself to me. So I was like, oh, actually, it's not wrong for me to be strong, or it's not wrong for me to be a man, basically. And I think the giving up myself aspect would be putting down that part of myself that I've spent years actually finding and discovering, and feeling so complete after finding, like, oh, I'm actually able to be a man. I can be myself. I can like going to the gym. I can like fighting people, or I don't know, like violent video games. You know, like I can like those things. It's not wrong to be a man. And then to come into a relationship, and for the biggest hurdle for the both of us to encounter would be for like, oh, actually no, now you have to surrender your singleness, which means your freedom to do whatever the hell you want, to play violent video games,
which you stopped doing.
Which I stopped doing, and to just spend all your time like verbally fighting with your friends for fun, or to just be around your guy friends all the time and just joke and do a bunch of like silly stuff, like punch each other in the face or whatever. We never did that completely, but we did do similar stuff, like we spite with each other and stuff. Not saying I gave it up completely, but it's more like you leave that single life behind, which is like, I think the freedom that comes from having that masculine power is so important to basically every guy, right? And I think, you know, the thing is, if you look back in the history of democracy, like the Magna Carta, like one of the first parts of the Magna Carta, which is the foundation of a democratic monarchy, or a constitutional monarchy, was man ought to be free. And if you, I'm summarizing this, but like man ought to be free, and if you would take away his freedom, you might as well take away his life. Right? It's either that or like the Scottish independence thing. Kind of going into history again.
Men just want to do whatever they want.
Exactly, and it's like that is very real. But then when you enter into a marriage, and when you have to take care of someone who's a weaker vessel, someone who you have to spend your strength and your energy protecting and to take care of, now all of a sudden all these freedoms go out the window, and now you can't just do whatever you want. Now you can't just go and
you're surrendering willingly for the greater oneness, not because you're just strong in a way because you don't value it.
Exactly. It's not like you just climb to the top of the mountain and you're like, oh, I guess I give this up. And in a sense, I think that approach would be the approach that I think the secular culture promotes men to do. Like, when you get married, just let your wife do everything. Just hand her the ropes. Just everything she says is true, or just whatever. Like, oh, my wife's the better half, or whatever. That's the other extreme, where it's just like you're completely giving up everything, which is even more miserable, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about here is more like embracing the fact that your woman is there to be a part of you.
Yeah.
And your strength should now be a part of herself as well.
Yeah.
And so, because of that, you give up your side of the equation of being single, of being able to do just whatever you want, and instead focusing that on building something with her, building a family, building a legacy, or just sharing your life with someone, right? I'm not sure if I'm coming across, but I think maybe guys will resonate with this. Like when you live with a woman, there's a lot of things you can't do anymore because she's in the house, right? You can't just, because you know, if I had it my way and I'm single, I could probably just be like, I'll work out one day, be like, you know what, I'm just gonna put the punching bag in the living room and start whacking the crap out of it. I probably can't do that when she's there. Not saying like, oh, she's making up rules so I can't do it. It's not like she's demanding so I can't do it. No, it's more like it's a silly thing to do when there's a woman in the house. You know, it's not like, it has nothing to do with emasculation. It has everything to do with like, it's not appropriate because she's not a man, and you shouldn't treat her like a man.
Yeah, it's actually respectful to see
Exactly.
me as the weaker vessel, not discriminating at all, because the fact is that it is respectful to, if that makes sense at all, because it's true. And
It is true, yeah.
yeah,
Like,
and it is loving to do that.
Because with that aspect in mind, like there's when the Bible says, love your wife, and I think it's like, I'm pretty sure it says love your wife in that particular passage. It says love your wife definitely, but it either says love your wife or it's like, give her something. But
Because
it's like
understanding.
live with her. That's the passage. Live with her with understanding as the weaker vessel.
Yeah.
Treat her with understanding as the weaker vessel,
Yeah.
and it has nothing to do with lowering the woman.
Yeah,
It has
that's a
everything
really
to
good
do
point.
with giving a woman the space and the love
That-
and everything she
yeah.
needs to thrive. And it has, like, in a sense, like if you look at the flip side, like wives obey your husbands, or wives reverence your husband. That has everything to do with giving your husband like the
space
freedom,
he
the
needs.
space, like he can't to exercise his power to go and do these things, not just for himself because he's in a family now, for the family, for her,
Exactly.
for the children, and for everything.
Yeah.
And going back to the punching bag example, like it's silly because now like I'm actually making less of you because I'm treating you like you don't deserve the honor a woman deserves.
Yeah, that's a really
Like,
good point.
I don't think that was a good example, but you guys probably know what I
treating
mean.
me, as a man, as your
Yeah.
equal, and I use the word equal in that sense of like,
Like she's just as powerful. Like she's just as capable of doing.
or like she's just exactly like
Yeah,
you.
she's just as like tolerant and able to withstand a bunch of things. Yeah,
Yeah, and in
Yeah.
that sense, it's wow, what was I going with my?
it's like something about like if I treat you as my equal, then that's
actually
making-
diminishing the honor I have as a woman, and it actually makes me weaker. It doesn't bring out my strength at all.
Because the strength is inner strength. It's not external like fighting strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't talk that much about masculine strength. I talked about implication. But it takes two types of strength to bring a family together. If you look at a lot of traditional family dynamics, and I probably came from one, you know, it's usually, actually no, I didn't come from one that was that traditional, but usually it's the dad who's like really strict. Like if you guys came from like an Asian home, like an Indian home, like a Southeast Asian, like you guys probably relate to this. Like the dad's really strict, just telling you to go study. He's like, if you don't study, I will whack you. But the mum is, okay, it doesn't happen all the time, but I know a lot of mothers who are more understanding, who would try to spoil their child a bit more, right? I guess it doesn't
both,
apply.
yeah.
It goes with. I know some families who just have like
The
a
opposite.
really strict mother, but I actually think that has come about because the dad isn't really in the home that much, and he doesn't really care about anything in the house. He just goes home to sleep, and then goes out the next day to the office, right? And that's his life basically. And that means that the woman now has to step up and have that outward strength as well, which actually diminishes her honor as the wife, right? But that's probably a topic for another time. But yeah, some of it does come to like personality, and a bunch of other factors like how that woman was raised, how that man was raised,
Yeah.
and yeah. But I think a lot of it does have to do with the feminist movement, teaching women not to be stronger, but to be like men, which is something completely different.
Yeah.
Like, because like we discussed, if a woman's strength, it comes from the inside, well then the feminists don't actually tell her to build that up. The feminists are telling her to be more like someone who's capable of doing external things and to have external power, which is something completely contrary to traditionally what a woman, or like, it's not even traditionally, it's just inherently what a woman has in abundance.
Yeah.
But anyway, you're probably better suited to talk about this.
Yeah, I feel like it actually gives us as women more anxiety because I know of a lot of female friends I have who they'll put more emphasis on the outward achievements, and I used to do that a lot as well, and it made me spiral into depression and just anxiety, even though it doesn't seem to affect me on the outside because I'm so good at suppressing it. It robs me away from the freedom I inherently have as a woman to take care of the inner world, and that's why I actually see like housekeeping and all these things as a privilege as well, because women are just naturally tending and nurturing to we're just a master at the inner world, and by stepping up into the domestic life we actually step into the place that we thrive in, but that doesn't mean that the man isn't involved in the domestic at all. It just means that
it just means that he contributes to it in a different way. Compared to the woman.
Because by stepping into the domestic and the inner role, you actually get to invite your husband to be part of it as well, because in this unity you have, you are bringing each other into each other's world at the same time. So you're never alone, and that's what I'm trying to put emphasis on. You're never
and it's
alone.
it's like you're missing out if you're just holding on to your strength.
Yeah.
Right, but if you're
mutually
opening up,
giving,
if you're opening up that strength and that world to the other person, right? Like, I would say like probably, I'm someone who's already pretty naturally inclined to family and things like that, which is just like my disposition. But I would say for a lot of guys, just saying, talking for single guys here, like most guys' houses are just like absolute mess, right? Just nothing's ever in order. Like there's cockroaches running around, and it smells terrible in the toilet all the time. The dishes aren't put away. It's just constantly like stuff happening in the house, just piling up, right? And a man like that will probably benefit a lot from living with a woman who's domestically inclined, who's going to take care of these things, not so she can do everything, but so he can observe and see, oh, actually, you know,
I can help. I can grow in.
It's like I can see I'm contributing to this mess, and I can see this is where my shortcoming is, and I guess, in a sense, like, you can talk about this as well, but like just when there's a benefit to a woman stepping into a man's world and seeing things from his perspective, and for example, like it doesn't really happen that much anymore, but you know, just 100, 200 years ago, most families, like the husband and the wife work together, and in a sense, there was probably clearer separation between domestic world and the external world, but the woman was able to go and see with his husband, like, oh, this is what he does. And
no, it's very open up. It's like open.
Yeah, but would you talk about like how you would benefit from coming with me to go and do something that I would do?
Yeah. So I think one it's right. It's exactly what we're doing now in a sense.
Yeah.
It's like right here, so
it's like now she gets her voice to be heard to the platform, right? Yeah, it's not just because she tried to do her channel before, but it was just for her. It was never like hitting.
Yeah, it was never
hitting something. Yeah.
Because I've been, in a sense, coming with you, and just being by your side. It gives me something to. It's really good for. How do I put this? Because it's something so indirect.
It gives you a presence, a place, because now you can stand behind him while he stands in front of you to handle what's in front of it.
Yeah.
But then you get to actually experience something you couldn't experience because he's carrying like the front of the load, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like stepping into being able to see the outside world through the strength of a man. That's how I would put it. Be able to face the outer world from a place of groundedness that you stand on when you're holding his hands, when you're just being with him, and it makes you a lot more like grounded and a lot more even though even though you still have your little shortcomings, and I do, like from time to time, it gives you strength to face the world together, and I think that's really important because you're able to extend you're able to infuse your inwards energy with the man's outwards energy, and together it becomes like a really strong force that is capable to handle things in a completely revolutionary way that isn't there before.
And I want to tie this into like what I heard a lot of guys say. Well, no, I hear a lot of girls say, which is like, oh, I wish my boyfriend was here with me because, like, I think, what did someone say? They were like, oh, I just want to go everywhere with my boyfriend because I just feel so safe with him when I'm out there.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't know this, but when a woman goes out there by herself, like to the public, she's constantly like looking at things, she's constantly like scanning. She's like, this is innate fear of like being kidnapped and all these things.
And
then all of that just goes away when she's standing next to someone who she knows she can trust in. Right? And that's part of the facing the world. And beside your man kind of thing. Like he can be there for you and be that barrier between the outside world and you.
And the inside.
And that gives you
insiders. And then we need that someone behind us, in front of us, and that masculine strength is something that is inherently protective of this inner strength that needs this outer shell.
And it's like it wouldn't really have a reason to exist if there was no external shell, right? Because we can see so many women step up to feel that for themselves before they can go and do that. Like single mothers who have to go out there and be all like tough and tell their kids, oh, never date a man who's like this, or like all men are pigs, and then but they're actually trying to feel the outer role for themselves so they can tend to the inner role.
And they never truly get to tend the inner role because of that as well.
But anyway, just trying to spark discussion. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. We started with a question. I think we've been doing this in this format for a while, so we just thought we'd keep going. But let me know what you guys think about today, and anything else you want to add?
I think I just want to say that we can be strong in both ways as who we are created to be, and that's a privilege, and that is one of the greatest things we can contribute to our society and also to the people around us that we love. It's to step into who we are, and
That's a pretty good conclusion. Anyway, thank you guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.